This is a task not only for the professionals and the medical field, but it also a task for the faith-based community. And I'm very appreciative of Dr. Kennedy as one of the leaders of community faith-based leaders who are advocating this this major topic that we're going to be discussing. And I'm very happy that I'm aligned with him, because I am so much an advocate for this myself, being that I had a medical condition that was kind of sprung up a little bit more because of my dad smoking in the house and all of that. So anyway, so I am really, really pushing hard for it. And, I see in the communities where we serve, we see a lot of these young ones, just, into this bad habits that is causing a lot of problems medically as well as economically. So with that said, my job as a facilitator today, I'm going to be relaxing because I have the pleasure of introducing someone who is really vastly passionate about this topic. And not only that, she's also one of our regional coordinators for the tobacco-free program or advocacy in Virginia. And I have the pleasure of introducing my own dear friend. I've seen her today. We've been talking a whole lot on the phone. And I'm not gonna do a disservice to your last name, Doc. So I'm just gonna call you Dr. Natalie, and then you can say your last name when you come on, okay? But let me just give you a brief background about this wonderful Dr. Natalie, who has been such an advocate for the tobacco-free environment. Dr. Natalie serves as the Regional Tobacco Control Coordinator for Northern Virginia. Before her current role, Dr. Natalie served as a medical advisor in tobacco control and smoking cessation at the National Department of Health in Argentina. During this time, she played a crucial role in shaping policies and programs aimed at reducing tobacco-related harm in communities. Her efforts were particularly impactful in implementing smoking cessation programs tailored to disadvantaged populations, with a keen focus on reducing health disparities. Additionally, she spearheaded the development of the clinical practice guidelines for treating tobacco addiction, underscoring her leadership in this critical area of public health. Dr. Natalie was a tenured associate professor at the Family Medicine and Community Health Department at the Instituto Universitario CMIC in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where she imparted her knowledge and mentored future healthcare professionals. She also worked as a family medicine physician at that same institution, providing compassionate care. You listen to the word, compassionate care to her patients for over a decade, integrating clinical expertise with a patient-centered approach. In January 2024, Dr. Natalie assumed the role of Regional Tobacco Control Coordinator at the Virginia Department of Health. In this capacity, she continues to drive impactful initiatives to prevent tobacco use among young individuals and promote cessation within the community. She remains committed to advancing the fields of medicine, education, and public health. Now you all know why Dr. Natalie is my friend. She has all the qualities I like. She likes to teach. She likes to lead. She likes to heal people. compassionately. So without any further ado, let me introduce my own friend, Dr. Natalie.
Hi. Thank you, Dr. Mary. Thank you so much. I'm real happy to be here with you tonight. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy, for the introduction as well. Sorry. First of all, as Mary asked, my name is Gospodinov. So yeah, my full name is Natalie Gospodinov. You can call me Dr. Natalie, that's fine. Yeah, so I'm thrilled to be here tonight. I'm hoping to be able to share some of what I like to talk about, what I'm passionate about, and hopefully help our community fight this terrible addiction that is smoking, vaping, and tobacco use in general. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a presentation here. Just let me know if you're able to see it so I can, okay. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so one of the main objectives for our tobacco control program is to share resources and bring services for people who are interested in quitting and quitting any tobacco or nicotine product use. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a overview of the different products we're talking about. I'm going to talk maybe more extensively about e-cigarettes. I know Dr. Sama mentioned that there was a particular interest in hearing more about this due to concerns of youth use in your community, and that is a reality. We are seeing it a lot among young adults and teenagers. And then I'm also going to talk about smoking. And of course, a lot of this information is on smoking is, well known, but it's always a good opportunity to review that. And after this review, I'll go through some of the resources we have for cessation, for helping people quit. So this is a brief a model of the different products we have available. So usually we talk about combustible tobacco products when we talk about cigarettes, cigars, cigarillos, hookah, pipe, roll your own tobacco, and BDs. And then you can see these in the middle of the chart here. And then to one side, you can see the electronic tobacco products, which are the famous e-cigarettes or vapes, and the heated tobacco products, which are a newer version or similar with the intent of using a battery to heat tobacco. And then on the other side, we have the non-combustible tobacco products. And these products are, so they don't use heat, or they're not combustible. So they're not exposed to a heat source. And here we have the smokeless tobacco, the kind of tobacco you can chew, snus, and then a more newer product that's nicotine pouches. And before I continue, and I didn't mention this before, please stop me if anyone has questions. If any comments or questions, please stop me. I would really like this to be more of a conversation, and I don't want anyone to have any unanswered questions. So please feel free to stop me. So, and here is a question for you, actually. What do you think all of these products have in common? I would love to hear someone or all of you, if you can think of
Is,
anything that
is
they
it the
have in
pres
common.
is it the presence of nicotine?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Yeah. So yeah. Can you think of any other things that they may can have in common?
You're talking about the addictive qualities?
Yes, that's right. And that's because nicotine is the substance that makes them addictive.
Huh?
And it's also what causes people to get hooked on them. And it's so hard to quit. Right. And we know, and when we're talking about youth and teenagers, this is a big concern because usually it only takes a few uses of any of these products for a teenager to get hooked on it, to become a regular user. And that is also why, in general, we've seen all throughout the decades that we've been exposed to tobacco products, how smokers usually start smoking, start this addiction in their teenage years. So usually a person who smokes will have started smoking at around 12, 13, 14 years old. So just so let's dive into the e-cigarettes. So these have been around for quite a few years now, about more than 10 years. And they've been, these products, which are electronic, and they usually can they can look like any other product that you might find anywhere, especially around youth. Like they might look like a pen drive, like a flash drive, like a highlighter, a pen. And this was first, designed this way to make it easier for the user to hide it, to blend in with any other object you might find in a young person's purse or bag or pocket. And what they do is they heat up a liquid, an e-liquid, which contains nicotine, and usually also contains flavors, and it produces an aerosol. That's the aerosol is what the user inhales into their lungs and their body, and then also exhales as a aerosol. So this graph kind of shows the different kinds. Now we also have like the newer versions of e-cigarettes that are disposable. There are tanks that contain the liquid, and they're usually disposable. And I have a few pictures of that here. So you can see here in the center of the screen, you can see the Elf bar. That's the kind of disposable a tank product. Then you can see the most frequent e-cigarettes that are used, called Views. And then towards the upper left part of your screen, you can see the heated tobacco products. This brand is called Icos. So it uses a small cigarette, looks like a cigarette, and it contains tobacco, but it heats the tobacco at a lower temperature than a regular combustible cigarette. And then towards the right of the screen or center, this round packet is called Zyn, and it contains nicotine pouches. These are, this is a pouch that contains nicotine. It can be either synthetic or it can come from tobacco plants. So it releases different, and it comes in different concentrations of nicotine, and the user is exposed to nicotine without the combustion of tobacco. And the same for the one on the bottom right called On. It's the same product. It's a nicotine pouch, just a different brand. So kind of I didn't want to bring a lot of numbers and statistics, but just for us to have an overall view. The graph in the upper left is
Before you go there, I was just wondering if these products, how do these products affect the lungs?
Well, the e-cigarettes contain, so it is an aerosol. It's not a vapor. So usually when you think of vapor, you think of water, right? Maybe something harmless. And that's what, we've been hearing throughout, since the cigarettes have emerged, how it's vaping. But it's not a vapor, really. It's an aerosol. So what aerosol means, there are tiny particles, tiny substances suspended in that aerosol. And these substances could be either metals, they can be different kinds of chemicals. And we know now, after more than 10 years of having people being exposed to e-cigarettes, that they can cause lung, irritation to your respiratory airways. So it causes cough, shortness of breath, and even inflammation in the lungs. And there is something called popcorn lung, which is it's a kind of scarring in your lungs. And this damage to the lungs is irreversible. So people are left with damage kind of similar to smoking. So it's irreversible damage that compromises your breathing.
See.
And that's only for the lungs. And I'll go in more in depth in that in a few slides. So where are we today with in regards of prevalence, or how, what percentage of youth use electronic cigarettes? So this first chart on the upper left shows for youth, so for people aged 9 to 18, the prevalence, and we can see a big surge, a big spike around the 2018, 2019. That's when one of the most popular products at that time was out, and it was called Juul, and it's still around, unfortunately. But we can see how, that time they were really advertising and pushing it. So we had a big surge in the prevalence. And it got up to 20% of youth using e-cigarettes. And it has come down, which is good. It did come down in 2021, but we are seeing a slight increase again, at least in the last numbers we have from 2022. So we're at about 10%. And that is across the US, and we see similar numbers within Virginia. What I like to point out is if you look at the chart on the bottom left, it shows the numbers by sex. So we can see how ladies, how women or female are vaping slightly more than male. And regarding race and ethnicity, we can also see in this last portion of the graph how the light blue lines represent Hispanic population, and the orange represent Black population. And we can see also how there's an increase from as of 2021 to 2022. There's an increase in the use of e-cigarettes among these two populations. So this is something that we we track. We're on top, and it helps us decide where to target our promotion and prevention programs and strategies. This is similar information, just this survey from last year. And these numbers show overall tobacco use among youth. So not only e-cigarettes, and the overall tobacco use has decreased, and that's thanks to less use of combustible cigarettes. But anyway, e-cigarettes are still an issue. And we can see here, so as I mentioned, about 10% of high school and middle school students use tobacco products. And among that 10%, we can see that most of them use e-cigarettes, which you can see here in green. So I thought I continue this part of the conversation to bring some myths and some some myths we can tend to hear every now and then. So what do you think of this that says e-cigarettes are, or what you use is a vapor, it's just water? Any thoughts on this?
Well, you did actually make a giveaway.
Yes.
You gave it away
Yes.
by stating that it's false.
Yeah.
Because there are remaining substances in it, and what they are claiming is not true.
That's right. And unfortunately, that is a way of misusing or misinforming is a way of attracting more users. So yeah, in fact, it's not a vapor, it's an aerosol. So just as you would think of a hairspray, that's the same thing. And there's actually very little water involved in the composition of liquids. So yeah, an aerosol has tiny particles and they're suspended in the air, and there are a lot of chemicals. And here's a brief summary of the chemicals that we can find. So not only nicotine, as we mentioned before, but also some chemicals that we know cause cancer. And we know this because they are the same chemicals that we can find in combustible cigarettes. There's also concentrations of heavy metals like nickel, tin, and lead. And other, with e-cigarettes, the concern and the damage also comes from the flavors they use. So most of the e-cigarettes use flavors that are approved or were designed for ingestion. So there are food flavorings or food dyes that we know are safe for us to eat, to swallow, they are safe in our digestive system. But they use the same flavorings in a product that we inhale and that our lungs absorb and take into our bloodstream and to to our organs. And they weren't designed to be to follow that route through our lungs and into our system. So we are seeing, damages from these flavors as well.
Huh?
Are we seeing the impact as yet in terms of cost on the healthcare system? I just wondered.
Well, yes, because when with e-cigarette use, you can increase your chances of getting asthma attacks, of different respiratory problems, and that is a burden on the healthcare system. For instance, there is also the problem with how it interferes in brain development. So when teenagers start using this, the nicotine especially alters the brain development, and this can is associated with problems with attention, with different mental health issues like anxiety or depression. It alters the way our executive functioning of our brain, and these can also impact on further costs to the healthcare system for because of these mental health issues.
Okay.
And that's only to mention a few. And then there's the cancer risk, and for cancer, you also need, unfortunately, you need many years of exposure to develop cancer. So I guess we'll start seeing this as time goes by. It kind of what happened with smoking. So back in the 1950s, we knew little about the effects of smoking on health. And then, 15 years later, in 1965, when the Surgeon General published their report saying that smoking actually caused health problems and it caused cancer. So it took a while for the evidence to be there, and for different public health and medical associations to say this is causing harm. Okay, so here's number 2. Using e-cigarettes is safer than smoking combustible cigarettes. Any thoughts on this?
It
louder.
sounds safer. The sound.
But it may be worse.
Yeah, well,
The idea is that there's no smoke.
Yeah, there's no safe product, actually. No. None of them are safe, right? So although it is true that e-cigarette aerosol can have probably lower amounts of the harmful chemicals, but still they're there and they can cause damage. And kind of like when we think of someone who smokes, who says, well, maybe if I just smoke 5 cigarettes instead of 20, it'd be better. Well, 5 cigarettes are still harmful, and they can still cause damage, and they increase your risks for several diseases and conditions. And as we mentioned before, both vaping and smoking are addictive because they both contain nicotine. And also, of course, bringing the chemicals in your body.
Would vaping be better because it doesn't have secondhand effects, to those people next door, the neighbors?
No, actually, it does have. There is the risk for second hand aerosol exposure. And there's also evidence of that. How people who don't smoke but are exposed, who don't vape but are exposed to vapes have increased respiratory problems, more asthma attacks. There is evidence, for example, in children who are asthmatic and or have asthma, and they get worse if they're exposed to vapes.
Okay.
And what about the health risk?
Doctor, and I was just going to say, that's a big myth because people feel that you're vaping, I've got families who do that and they have kids. Oh, it doesn't affect them. Nothing is going in the air. So that's a big myth.
Yeah, especially, I mean, for me, it's like once I learned like how the aerosol works, I'm like, yes, this will stay there and it will stay in the air and then will go, it will remain in the room. And that is why, yeah, it's really important to educate and let people know that this can still harm you. And yeah, it doesn't have the awful, because sometimes I hear, well, it doesn't smell as bad as cigarettes, but yeah, that's why they made it, they put in flavors into it to make it smell, actually make them attractive. And that's how also kids are attracted to them. And most of the teenagers use flavors in the vapes.
Yeah.
So that's another point. So yeah, we review some of these, but yeah, some of the effects are, increasing cough, shortness of breath, provoking not only like asthma exacerbations for someone who has a history of asthma, but also causing asthma, like someone who for the first time is diagnosed with that. The lung scarring that I mentioned before, and then this disease called EWC, which came up back in 2019, and it is also a respiratory problem, and people could actually have respiratory failure and end up in the hospital, even die. And it was mostly related to the vapes that contained vitamin E. Again, this was a substance that we're using at the time to make the e-cigarettes more attractive. But vitamin E was not made for inhaling it. So it caused damage to the lungs. And also with e-vapes, and I haven't mentioned this before, but it does cause heart problems. So first of all, it can increase your blood pressure and make your arteries go narrower, so they constrict, and this can increase your risk for cardiovascular problems. And then it's something that sometimes we don't think about, but these batteries can explode and cause injuries and burns. And also there's the related to this and related to children is the accidental ingestion of the liquid, because a small kid can find it lying around and they start playing with it and they get exposed to the substances, either because they spill it on top, they drink it or whatever. So there's an accidental exposure to the vapes as well. And then for cancer, so the chemicals that we find in e-vapes have the potential to cause cancer. And these have been well studied with smoking, but we are, gathering more and more information about this in regards to e-cigarettes. And then some other consequences, and we mentioned this before, the addiction, and especially the potential for e-vapes to be a gateway towards other substance use, not only combustible cigarettes, but other substance use, and we see this frequently, unfortunately, with cannabis. And then, and there's the secondhand exposure to the aerosol as well. So how are we doing so far? Any questions? Any comments?
I think you're doing very well.
I was just
Okay.
thinking,
But this is Pastor Kelly talking.
I
Okay.
was just thinking about what you said, that the relationship to cannabis,
Mhm.
in terms of the negative effects. It says mind altering. That I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know how the brain develops, continues to develop up until the age of 25 approximately. So we're seeing, these kids have been exposed to e-vapes and they start, probably 10 years before that or even more. And yeah, it's been affecting their control, impulse control, the attention, the way they learn, the mood. And yeah, and if you add cannabis to that, well, that's a big, huge
I
problem.
guess it's too early to determine the impact on learning.
Yeah.
If anybody is tracking those persons who vape, whether or not they succeed educationally.
Yeah.
That it would be interesting to know that
Yeah.
if that happens.
And then there's also I mean, some people can start using any of these products maybe to deal with issues related to anxiety, depression. But now we know that tobacco use and nicotine use leads to even more anxiety.
Mhm.
And on the other hand, we see when they do quit, when they're able to quit, how those mental health issues improve and they feel much better. So it's also hard, some at first to explain how, well, maybe, by quitting, you'll feel better, when they say, oh, but this is what I need to cope with my mental health problem.
Actually, Dr. Natalie, this morning, I was doing my little trying to get people to come on the Zoom thing. So I was at the Fairfax station here in Virginia, where the VRE train and then the buses come. So I ran into two young ladies, in their 20s. They were standing there just puffing the smoke, and the other one had I don't know, something that it was one of those vape products. So I just walked up to them and said, wow, this is an opportune time to invite you to something we're doing so great that will help you with what you are doing here. So the young lady said to me, this is how I cope. He said, I'm supposed to be, when I take a break, they worked in the complex there. So he said, I take a 10 minutes coping break. This is how I cope. But anyway, and then the other one said, but you know what? It doesn't really help. You just like 10 minutes, and when we go to get on the nerves, we have to come back in here and do it again. So yeah, and it doesn't help them, but that's what they think. It's how they cope. So hopefully, I don't know if they're on my Zoom link. So I did invite them.
Oh, I hope they are. Yeah, and that's also another area to work on, kind of showing what other ways there are to cope, other strategies for this. Yeah. And that's also something that when someone wants to quit, we also work on how to manage the cravings and so on.
Could I ask, did they say this is how we cook? C-O-O-K? Coke.
COPE.
I beg your pardon.
They can cook it too, Doc.
Yeah. That's what I was mixing up. But yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So just I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I'll briefly go through some facts on smoking and tobacco use. So this slide summarizes for the last 3 iterations of this national survey, the tobacco product use among adults. And here you can see the first set of bars is any tobacco use and how it's been declining from 20.8% among adults in 2019 to 18.7% in 2021. And for cigarettes, which is the third set of row of bars, you can see how it's down to 11.5. So we're doing good. And this only shows, you know, these three, the most recent information, but this has been declining for years and years. So back in 1965, cigarette use was up to like 43% among adults. Oh, I see someone has their hand raised.
Yes, I have a question. How did COVID affect
childbirth and the postpartum period be a really wonderful time?
How did COVID affect the use of these products? You know, I mean, I guess people were not socializing with each other, but then they stayed at home. So I don't know.
Yeah, there was that. And there was also the concern about respiratory problems. And at that time, and now we know more about it, but there were first reports where for people who use cigarettes tended to have worse outcomes with COVID. So I guess that also all helped. And we also saw that among youth and cigarette use, e-cigarette use, especially, I guess, because they were, as you said, not socializing, spending more time at home, and that kind of helped. But yeah, it definitely impacted.
Thank you.
In Virginia, we've seen something similar. The latest data is about 12% of adults smoke in Virginia, and this represents about 700,000 adults. So there's a lot of people out there who need our help. And we'll see later on that most of the people who use tobacco products wish to quit. And another important
question for you.
Yes.
Because of the fact that the dominant states, among the dominant states with that supported tobacco as an industry, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and a few of the other states, is it possible, or how do you see the reflection is going on, since you're focused on Virginia, whether or not, as compared with other states, whether Virginia has been going through a heavy decline, or whether or not there's a lot of resistance that is happening because there's economic question?
Yes, that is always an issue, especially when, I guess, when new policies want to, be implemented. But we do, I mean, overall throughout Virginia, the numbers have gone down, but we see great disparities. Like Northern Virginia numbers are completely different from, say, like the Southwest area of the state. So unfortunately, there are a lot of disparities in regards of, the different policies and how they're implemented in each area. And I guess the important history or background with tobacco, as you mentioned, in Virginia is a factor, a barrier when trying to change and to implement policies. It's always a struggle because
Yes.
the tobacco producers are still in the state, but not only the growers or the industry,
May I ask, do you think the socioeconomic disparity or situation has anything to do with one region of Virginia having more smokers than the other?
I guess it's a blend of different factors. But we still see certain areas, certain communities that are targeted more than others. And that's why we also see, pockets of populations that have higher prevalence of smoking or cigarette use. And that's really unfortunate. And I don't know what the solution for that is at this point, but I'm hoping, we can keep working on helping mitigate those differences among areas and among populations. Okay. So here's some more information about smoking. So of course it affects every organ in the body. We know the large number of substances that that the body that go into the body when someone is smoking, and how it can cause a wide range of diseases and even premature death. So we know that a smoker will probably lose 10 years of their life. So will die 10 years before what was expected for that person. And then, the substances that cause cancer have been identified, and we know what they are and what they cause. And the risk for all of these terrible outcomes increases with a number of cigarettes smoked. So as time goes by and more years of smoking and more and a larger number of cigarettes, it increases your risks of any of these problems. Sorry, and yeah. And then not only does smoking cause cancer, and we can see here, highlighted some of the organs where you can get cancer, like lungs, kidney, pancreas, colon, bladder, liver, among others. But it also causes heart problems, respiratory problems, like chronic pulmonary disease, asthma. It increases your risk for stroke as well. And some other maybe less known or less that we have discovered lately or more recently are diabetes, blindness. Other issues are, for example, reproductive health problems, and lowers fertility and causes negative impact on pregnancy and on the newborn, things like low weight at birth and so on. Any questions so far? Oh, my time is running by. So I'm gonna go by these slides a little faster. So I always like to point out, okay, but what happens, let's bring in the positive. What happens when you quit? What happens when someone decides to stop smoking? And the good news is, it's never too late to quit. And even people who have been diagnosed with respiratory problems, even with cancer, when they quit, they do better. They feel better. And their outcome is better. Actually, someone who has been diagnosed with cancer and quits, their risk of dying reduces about 30%. So this is a great message, to to let her, the community know that it's never too late. And they can see benefits even like immediately as they
Your
stop
daddy
smoking,
saw the benefits, right?
because their heart rate improves. The carbon monoxide level in the blood is normalized. Their circulation and their lung function is better. There is less coughing or shortness of breath, less hospitalizations related to respiratory problems, and their risk for stroke also decreases. And also something to point out is, it's really important for anyone who's planning on getting pregnant or who is pregnant and to quit in any, no matter what stage of pregnancy. It's always important to quit and to help and offer help to that person. Usually with pregnancy, it's a good opportunity because they have an extra motivation to quit. So we want to bring those messages of, how important it is and how this will positively impact not only their health, but the baby's health, of course. Something else I want to point out always is, when you quit, you're also saving money because cigarettes are expensive. And this is just, some calculation done on a pack of cigarettes. It costs about $5. And sometimes pointing out, if you save for a month, you'll have enough money to buy a pair of new shoes, or after a year you can buy 2 iPhones, something like that. And that's also motivation when someone is planning to quit, to say, okay, set your goal. So what's your goal? To save up for, what's your goal gonna be? And of course, when you quit, you're also protecting everyone around you. You're and not only quitting smoking, but also e-cigarettes. So you're protecting them from the harms of secondhand smoke, and that's the smoke or the aerosol that is in the air. And also something that's less talked or spoken about is the third-hand smoke. And the third-hand smoke is the substances that remain in the objects around us, like in the room where someone has smoked. The toxins can get into, the walls, any materials, any clothing. So and that is, and it's known that exposure to that can cause harm. And for example, we've seen that with babies who live in households where they're exposed to cigarette smoke. The substances that remain within their toys, their everything that's around them can intoxicate them. Okay, so the good thing is that, as I mentioned before, the majority of the people who use cigarettes or tobacco products want to quit. And this is true not only for adults, but also for youth. And so it is important to mention that, there is help that they can quit. But it is also important to know that, as I mentioned before, smoking and vaping is an addiction. It's, really not a habit, or not a good habit, of course, but it's more of an addiction. And as an addiction, usually it takes, more than one attempt for someone is intending to quit, to quit for good. But the good thing is, with each new attempt, the chances of success in the following attempt increase. So that's something, to encourage anyone who's interested in quitting. Because frequently we run into people who say, oh no, I've tried this before, but I cannot quit. So it is important to mention that, sometimes they do need more than one attempt or multiple attempts until they're successful. And the majority of the people will try going cold turkey. But unfortunately, cold turkey on its own is not a very successful strategy. Only 3% of the attempts are successful. So, what we like to do is bring people the best treatment, or what we know that is that is helpful, that is evidence-based, and that we know that works. And the best combination for this is counseling and the FDA approved medications. When you combine these, the chances, double, or it doubles your chances of quitting. And counseling can be done either individually, with a individual counselor. You can use our quit line, which is a 1-800-QUIT-NOW. And I'll go more in depth into that. And it's a great resource, and it's free. And so you can combine counseling with there are 7 FDA approved medications for this. Some of them are over the counter. Those are the NRT, the nicotine replacement therapies. And then there are 2 medications which will need a prescription from a physician. And they're all very good, very effective for quitting. And of course, the social support, the support from your family, friends, the community, the faith community, is really important when someone is trying to quit. And just a reminder, e-cigarettes are not an FDA approved cessation tool. We do not recommend these, and at least not as a first line. We would, first recommend to use the FDA approved medications. And just a little overview of our quit line. This is a free and confidential service. It is available 24 hours a day. I think the only time they're not available is over Thanksgiving, Independence Day, and Christmas Day. But other than that, they're available 7 days a week. And you can access the service through phone, text, chat, and there's also a web-based counseling. So they have bilingual coaches, English and Spanish, and then for 140 other languages, they have translation services. And this is good for anyone 13 or over who uses any type of tobacco or nicotine product. And it is also available for anyone who, regardless of if they use any tobacco product, if they like to access to more information about, maybe they're concerned about someone, a friend or family, and how to help them. So they're also, our coaches are available also to talk to them. What the line also offers is free nicotine replacement therapy, and the amounts or the length of the treatment will depend on each particular situation, but usually they tend to give at least 2 weeks of NRT, and sometimes it could go up to 8 weeks depending on the particular situation. So the person will have a dashboard that they can access their personalized plan. They can also choose to go to use any of the group sessions. And they'll have access to other educational resources and referrals within the community. So this is a brochure I have available. If you also would like to order, I can let Dr. Mary know how to order any of our promotional materials. And just a quick mention of Live Vape Free. This is a text counseling for anyone from 13 to 24 years old who's wanting to quit vaping. And they also have a website that offers information for parents or any concerned adults on how to help kids quit. And these are just the QRs to access any of these the information.
Yeah, I'm going to coin
Here's
a term here. Yes, I'm calling social psychological effects. How do you deal with kids who think that smoking causes them to look cool and is attractive to the opposite sex?
Wow.
Well,
anybody?
That is a tough question. But then what I like to always show them is that, you know, how they started off because they thought it was cool, but then they got hooked on it and it's hard to quit. And sometimes you can even what can help is getting like the experience of maybe someone else similar age or maybe a little older who's been through this, and they can show how hard it was for them to quit, how vaping harmed them, caused negative impact on their health. I also like to showcase, like, for them to know how I guess, and this message they usually don't really like, how the tobacco industry also targets them and wants to manipulate them and get them hooked on them. That is also a message they don't usually like. I don't know, any other ideas, anyone?
Well, we're just about, the time is about over. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
But the same way that we have to gain the confidence of young people from those kind of communities that get caught in this thing easily, it's the same way that we
Education.
because you just have to get in those communities like Dr. Samba is doing, and like church communities are supposed to do. Go close to them, because of the fact that many of them, they do not have the kind of home family support that they need to have. So I'd answer it that way, that it's a kind of, it's not just going to give an invitation, come to a program. I think Dr. Samba and I were talking earlier today, and she brought that out. It's very, very hard to reach them. But we're just like for the vaccination, for pandemic, or some of the other things, that you have to gain the confidence. And the interesting thing, if we can catch them early, it is better, because I'm telling you, I've been working over maybe 5 years with just 2 individuals, one a little bit longer than the other. But I've been working with those 2 individuals caught in the habit. Finally, I think one of them, he's on a break now for a few weeks. But it is something. It is something. It's a tough game.
Are you saying that the body system would work?
That's where it works.
Yeah.
That's because accountability partners are very important to individuals who are on any substance abusers. The accountability persons that they trust. They are very distrustful individuals, or they are very indisciplined. And that's a word that may come up tomorrow night in the presentation that will be made. That not only them, but people, on a general basis, people like to make excuses for their bad habits. So the thing is, there's a lot of trust to be gained.
That's true.
By those individuals. If you don't have their trust, you know, it's not like you go out on the street, you see somebody smoking, you want to try to call to them and you see what happens. They're ready to explode on you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a hard work. People who do this kind of work, they do know it's very frustrating, but the reward can be when you see one person break away.
I wonder if a financial incentive would work.
That makes it worse. They'll use you to go get more.
Some of them would go out and take in a Bible.
More packs.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of campaigns that have used economic incentives, and they have worked. But I don't know the long-term impact of that. But I would definitely agree on buddy system, or, you know, an ambassador system, someone, you know, it is also important for them to hear, you know, a peer kind of view. That also helps. And also learning other coping skills. Because I guess, you know, maybe some of these kids are also, you know, they see at home how, you know, maybe the adults are also using substances, and
that's right.
They don't, they might need other ideas for coping, and not to, you know, only use nicotine as a coping mechanism.
Thank you. Thank you. I turn over back to Dr. Samba. We are about a minute over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can go on and on and on with this topic. And I know tomorrow is going to be another round warming from the two doctors. But anyway, I want to thank you, Dr. Nadley. It's very, very important. I know you and I are going to be working closely together.
Great.
That position has been vacant for a while. And I've been screaming for it to be filled. Now that you're on board, Dr. Kennedy and I will be working with you, because we intend to be advocated in our communities. We're not going to stop. You know, like we know it's not an easy thing. It's very difficult, because like you say, it's an addiction. It's not a behavior problem. It's an addiction. And I think if we just target the younger teenagers, which is the hardest group, but it just takes one of them in that group to stop.
Yes, to spread the word and stop. Yeah.
That's that one I'm looking for. So again, I want to thank you, State of Virginia, of course, Department of Health here in Northern Virginia. I want to thank you. I know some of the members on the line tonight, and I have some of my leaders in the community are on, and one of the leaders for the youth in my church is on.
Great.
So she's gonna be taking that information out there. So I want to thank, and of course, the Emmanuel Wellness Center, Dr. Kennedy's ministry, church. They are on the Zoom presentation. So we're gonna do our best. And I know you're coming back. You're not on the Zoom, but you're gonna be with me in the community. So thank you very much.
Great.
And I hand over to you
so much.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe this time we'll have Dr. June. Can you take us out? Before you do so, I do have a questionnaire. I'm not completed it yet, but hopefully I'll have it for the next meeting. And and I know the folks who have attended the presentation, so I will send the surveys to them so they can complete it.
And so for this week, for those of you who would like a public announcement, we are on tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. We are on Wednesday evening, and Wednesday evening study is going to be a little bit different. Then Thursday evening we're on, and And on Friday evening, we close out our series. We have done the financial. Dr. Cargill and his son, they have done basic financial education and its implication for health. And we have done Creation Health series, and we are going to have on the 15th of June, Creation Health is going to have a big cookout day where we're going to demonstrate
for choosing the choices we make for resting our bodies.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
You're
sorry.
unmuted. We cannot hear you.
I'm muting.
Creation Health. And I'm saying some people might not know what that is. The C is for choice, the choices that we make, how it impacts our lives. R is for rest, resting the body.
And the mind.
E and the mind. E is for our environment. How do we treat it and how that affects our bodies? A is for staying active at all times. T is for building trust. I is for building interpersonal relationships. O is for our outlook on life and how that affects our bodies. And N is for nutrition. Put those all together, we can become whole individuals. Our lives can be better. We can add years to our lives by following those laws of health. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for what we have heard today. We recognize that many of us have gone very far away from what you intended. We have destroyed our bodies in many ways, thus shortening our lives and creating a myriad of health challenges. But Lord, we do admit to what we have done to our bodies and to our environment, and we seek your forgiveness. And we thank you for those who are committed to sharing what they know about the impacts of these things that we do on our bodies and helping us to make a turnaround, changing so that our lives can be enhanced. Thank you for all those who are here tonight, and help that we will share with others what we have heard so that they too can have the information they need to make the change that is necessary. Thank you for hearing us again, and may you continue to be with us, both now and forevermore, we pray.
Amen.
Amen.